Hello, beautiful humans. This is Leashia from Ethical Wellness Programs, and you are listening to the Heal in Motherhood podcast, the show that combines the science of the mind-body connection and trauma research, along with spiritual teachings and practical tools to help women heal their lives from the inside out and reclaim their inner goddess, while showing up as the person, parent, and partner they came here to be. If you like what you hear on today's show, please don't forget to leave us a review on the iTunes podcast app so that we can grow our community and impact as many women's lives as possible. Hello, welcome everyone. I've got a really special episode for you today. Today we're going to be talking about mum rage. I've got Charlie here. I'm super excited. Also got my kids here with me today, so both of them are at home with me, and so we might have a few disturbances. We may not, but I just thought I'd let you all know, and that is just part of mum life and work life when you're meshing the two together. So yeah, we're keeping it real today, and there might be some loud noises in the background, and that's okay.
Just got to normalize that, right? Just got to normalize the fact that we are mothers and we're also, fulfilling our purpose in life. And sometimes they do cross over, and that's okay.
Yeah. And letting go of the idea as well that we need these podcasts to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Letting go of that perfectionism. I know that's been a big thing for me. And yeah, keeping it real. And the reality is, like you said, sometimes it crosses over. Yeah, sometimes the kids scream and dance and sing. I can hear them. You may not be able to hear them, but they
I
are
can't.
there.
No, I can't. I can't hear them actually. No.
I can hear them going, la, la, la.
But how beautiful though. And it reminds me of a quote actually. And it's a quote that when I first heard it, I was like, oh my God, it's so true. And I talk about it in the work that I do. And that is, we are expected to work as though we don't mother and mother as though we don't work. And we do, and so this is a really good example of the fact that we do both if we want to. Motherhood doesn't require a further title. I'm a big believer of that. But if we choose for there to be, because there's a purpose outside of the home or financially we need to, then the reality is we're in between both worlds and we can't bypass that fact. It's the reality. It's the truth.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love the idea of, the kids being able to be in the workspace, quote unquote, with us, and us being able to show them what it is we do outside the mothering and the home, because it's really cute because my girls, that they understand and know what I do, they're like, oh, mummy, you're working on your book today, or you're creating on the computer today, or what have you been up to? Or they come and they have a look and they see what I'm doing and what I'm writing and, who I'm talking to. They come on and said hey to Charlie this morning. And it's actually really beautiful and really nice because it doesn't feel so detached, It feels like they're really understanding as well from their little perspective of like, oh, mum does other stuff than just look after me,
Yeah.
Which is really beautiful. It's really nice. She's like, I want to work on the computer like you, mummy, when I grow up.
Well, my middle son was like, Mummy, you go teach Olga. So when I'm teaching yoga at the minute, it's like, you go teach Olga. I'm like, yeah, baby, I'm going to go and teach Olga. And then he came in the other day when I was building something on the computer, building part of my program. And he came in and grabbed my yoga mat. So it's like, I think I want to do yoga. So it's like, okay, do. So when I got his yoga, and that's the thing, right? They lead by example. We lead and live by example. And I think that's, like you said, it's a really important invitation for our children to see the other parts of us. I think it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So without further ado, we're going to get to today's topic, which is mum rage. And Charlie's got a beautiful quote or definition. Is it a definition?
I'd say it's a definition more than a quote because it's pretty long. I think it sums it up perfectly. And this was written by Cristalle Hayes. So she's the author of Angry Mother Assertive Mother. This is her perspective on maternal rage, right? Mum rage. Mum rage is when motherhood makes us angry, and that anger blindsides us. We expect motherhood to be a blissful experience that only brings joy, but motherhood is much more complex than that. Motherhood, whilst it can be wonderful, can also take its toll on women. We experience maternal rage when we are in a place of lack of self care, lack of time to ourselves, lack of sleep, or lack of support. We experience maternal rage when we have unresolved traumas from our childhood, which motherhood can trigger. We experience maternal rage because we are raging at the shift in our identities as women. We rage at our partners whose lives may seem more unaffected by parenthood. We rage at the lack of support, burnout, and constant criticism and judgment from society. We may also feel rage when overwhelmed with the mess, perpetual laundry, and sensory overload, the noise from plastic toys, cartoons, siblings fighting, and constant demands for snacks. Mum rage is when we become overwhelmed with anger and struggle to access the calm and the patient side we usually experience as a parent. And I remember when I first heard that, or when I first read that, I was like, yeah, that's kind of it. I was like, pretty much. Because
well,
I was
the
never
end of the podcast.
And there we go, everybody. But that's the thing, though, because I don't know about you, like I was never an angry person before becoming a mum, and I'm not even now. I'm not an angry mum. Like I understand, and I work very hard on the ways that I talk to my children and stuff. But I get angry at my husband. I get angry at the situation. I get angry at the expectations, and I get angry that some of my like it says, some of my traumas are coming forward. I get angry thinking I'm the only one carrying the mental load. And this is like, it was really new to me. And I don't know about you, like so new to me because anger wasn't a comfortable emotion in my body before. I grew up thinking anger was a really negative, volatile, dangerous emotion because I grew up with trauma, a lot of domestic violence. And so when I became angry as a mother and I felt this maternal rage, I thought that there was something wrong with me. So when I read this, I was like, oh. Well, this is a thing. Like, this is a real thing. Thank God for that. I don't know about you. I don't know how what your experience of it was, but yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the first time I've heard that, and I thought it was so beautifully well written and explained, and it's something I've been exploring a lot more. I've been writing my own book, which we was talking about at the beginning of this, and that's how to stop losing it with your kids. So a lot of that is to do with, I've focused it more on triggers, but I do go into my programs talking about rage and anger, and my relationship has really changed with anger since becoming a mum as well, because I feel probably the same as you, Charlie. I wasn't an angry person. My relationship with anger was very suppressive. Like I would suppress my anger, suppress, I'm okay, everything's okay, suppress, 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 put a positive spin on everything, see the silver lining. But then I'd have these little explosive moments where the anger needed to escape, and that would be rage. It's that primal rage where it's like, it just needs to get out. It needs to, and that might be, once I remember when it was after I had my second child, Rosie, and I was standing at the sink doing the washing up, and I already had this story around the washing up, about when I was pregnant. It used to be really painful because of pregnancy trauma that I had, and how my partner wasn't supporting me in that. And this turned into a massive rage for me. And I was so upset, but I wasn't saying anything. So that was me suppressing and being like, no, it's not a big deal. It's just the washing up. I should just get on with it. I should just do it. It's my job. Da, 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 da. And then the other part of me would be like, this is so unfair. Why am I not getting the support that I need? My partner doesn't help me. And because he doesn't help me, he doesn't appreciate me, he doesn't love me, he doesn't, and it turned into this massive story until one day I just grabbed the plate and I threw it at the wall. And Stephen came out to the kitchen and he's like, what the fuck is going on in here? You know? And I
Yeah.
just lost it. And I was like, I'm so fucking sick of doing the washing up. And I'm so sick of doing this. And I'm the only one who does anything. Right into that rage and that victimhood and powerlessness and helplessness. And I was so angry.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I would
I
have those
relate so
moments.
much. Yeah.
Those moments.
And so I love that. And let's
That was my
normalize that.
relationship with anger.
Oh, and you know what? I love that. And let's normalize that. But what you said interestingly there as well, which got me thinking, that whole idea of suppressing it is because we've spent our whole lives being the good girl, being the good wife, being the good mother, being the people pleaser. And so we've been self-silencing for generations. And we carry that within our own DNA, right? We carry that self-silencing, not just our own, but our mothers and their mothers. And because otherwise it's like, you're not a good woman, or you're not a good wife, or you're not a good mother, if you're not people pleasing all the time, if you're not giving all of yourself all of the time. And so I found that so interesting, because I was, I completely relate in that. Again, I suppress so much of my anger and frustration, not just obviously in motherhood, but I realized, just with the world and just with certain things, just with a lot of things that happened in my past. I'd suppressed it for so long because of this whole good girl mentality.
Yeah.
It's so ingrained in our culture,
And also that idea of what anger means, for some people, anger is aplenty in their childhood, in a way of, that's how people react and respond and talk to each other. So, a raised voice in a home might be something that they're used to. And I know for me, I saw that explosive anger that I just spoke about there. I saw that in my mother. She was not an angry person, and she never hardly got angry or upset. But when she did, she lost it. It was that explosive rage, because she was so used to suppressing her stuff. And I just carried that on. And my relationship with anger was that, like you said, if you were angry, you were a bad person. And it comes back to that idea, like you say, of like, to be good people, we're not allowed to be angry. And my idea around that now has completely shifted. And what it's allowed me to do is it's allowed me to embody and embrace and see the functionality of what anger actually means. Because when it comes back to it and down to it, as that lady so beautifully wrote in that definition there, is our mum rage comes back to unmet needs. It comes back to us not having our needs met in some way, and our trauma, which, our trauma is our unmet needs. And then that exploding into something primal, something that we feel out of control. So, yeah, what's your experience been with mum rage? Have you got any stories that you'd like to share with us?
You know what, right? There's one story, there's two stories actually, and similar to you. I can't even remember the exact moment or the exact kind of trigger. I just remember, like, I think I was taking the rubbish out or something, or I was like, I don't know. I literally had a bag of rubbish in my hand, and I can't remember exactly why, but I just lost my shit. And I'm not, like I said, like, I'm not a naturally angry person at all. And so at one point, I literally just like threw this bag of rubbish over the floor, and I started hitting myself, just going like, I'm so fucking angry about this whole situation. Like, I just lost it. The other thing I did as a moment of mum rage, which, you know what, I look back now and I go, oh my God, poor baby, because this is not something that I do. And so one of the things I love about you and your work is obviously you talk about anger, and I guess the important thing is we don't label it as being good or bad. It's a natural human emotion, and it's perfectly healthy for us to feel the way that we feel. And so one of the things I do with my kids is I talk to them, oh, mummy was angry. Like, do you feel angry sometimes? You know, it's okay for us to feel angry. And one of the times I had to do this was when I was pregnant, actually, with my third son, who's just turned 1. So it wasn't even that bloody long ago. I had spent all day, like I was doing something, and either way, whatever the situation was, I hadn't taken care of myself that particular day. I hadn't eaten and I was starving. And I was trying to eat a sandwich. And my middle son, he's like, Mummy, I want your sandwich. Mummy, can I have your sandwich? Mummy, can I have your sandwich? So what I did, I went, fine, you can have my sandwich. And I threw it at him. And literally to this day, my poor darling is like, Mummy threw a sandwich at me. And I'm like, I did. And then I had to have the conversation with him. Like, I'm so sorry that I did that. This is why I did that. This is nothing about you. This is because Mummy didn't take care of herself today. Mummy didn't prioritize what Mummy needed today. And, you know, and then I had to have the conversation that we all feel angry sometimes. Angry isn't a bad emotion. I could have dealt with that situation better because I needed him to know it wasn't about him. But again, going back to what you said, is it came back to the fact that my needs were not met that day. And I hadn't prioritized myself and what I needed that day. And so I got overwhelmed, I got frustrated, I got resentful. And as a result, I'm throwing fucking sandwiches at a 3-year-old boy. Like, not my finest moment as a mother. But I think we can all relate. Right?
Sorry, I'm trying not to laugh, but it's quite comical when you look back, isn't it? It's like and you can feel your blood boiling in that moment. And I know so many times for me is that I can feel it, but because of all my training and all the knowledge, I then go into this, like, I've got this feeling inside my body. And then I've got this person inside my head who's like, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You're being ridiculous. It's just because of, you know, you're angry because your daughter's drawn all over your lovely leather sofa because you didn't take the pens off her and put them up high. You left your pen out on the side that you'd write in with your journal the night before. So, you know, it's like I knew it was me, but I couldn't stop this feeling. And that is what rage is. It's that energy in motion. It's not something that we can necessarily stop. We're not going to stop feeling angry. We're not going to never be angry.
Yeah.
And that's not where we're trying to go. And I think this is where people kind of get a bit stuck because then they shame themselves and they guilt themselves and they feel bad. They don't address the situation. So they do the thing and they get angry at the child. And then that's the end of that. And like you said, with the throwing of the sandwich, then the little child, you know, goes off and thinks there's something wrong with me because mummy threw a sandwich at me.
Yeah.
You know, that's their brain capacity when they're 3-year-olds.
Mm.
You know, they're all in their ego at that age. So they think anything that you do, they will make it about them.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's not or if it is, they will make it about them. And this is why the repair work is so, so, so important. And it's actually more important, or as important, should I say, as the rage work. You know, we can do all the rage work, but like I said before, we're going to have moments, no matter how calm and peaceful as a parent we are, we're all going to have our moments of anger and rage, and it's going to come out. We can't constantly meet our needs. We can't constantly have our needs met. And sometimes we're going to lose it. And that is our opportunity for the growth, for the expansion, for us to lean in and be like, okay, what was happening here? What went wrong? And how can I do better next time? And how can I go and let my child know that actually that wasn't the best way for me to show up, and it's not how I want to show up. And I think what you said there about you going and then speaking and having that conversation is so, so important. And it's so often missed as well. And it's such a missed opportunity. And that's where our guilt and our shame festers and manifests into different things, right? Because we're not doing the work after. We're still going to have the rage and the anger, but we need to do the work after and use it as an opportunity for growth and healing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, you know, one of the best things I ever learned was the whole concept of the good enough mother, which, you know, is based on that attachment parenting theory that we only have to be parenting our children well enough 30% of the time to raise well-rounded, grounded children. And I think, and it's based on that philosophy of we're not perfect and we are going to cause ruptures. It's about how we repair and how quickly we repair those ruptures. And, you know, for many adults, though, I guess the challenge then comes in that taking that self-responsibility, because we don't like to admit that we've made a mistake. We don't like to admit that that wasn't my finest moment as a bloody mother, especially as someone that identifies as, you know, a conscious mom or a mindful mom or a gentle parent. The fact that I'm throwing sandwiches was not very gentle, but I have to take responsibility and I have to take ownership. I did that. And I did that because, and like you said before, a lot of the time as well, we feel this rage towards ourselves and this anger towards ourselves that we haven't course corrected, or like, I know I should have eaten. I'm like, why did I not? Why have I put myself in this situation again where I'm not prioritizing my needs? Why am I doing that to myself? In a way, it's a self-abandonment that we do again and again and again. And so we get angry more so at ourselves than we do our children or at the situation or at the circumstance, because we have just in that moment, yet again, we have abandoned ourselves. Again, I think coming back to the good girl, the need to please, the, you know, the all sacrificing, all pleasing mother that does everything for everybody else. And in that moment, we then don't have the capacity and we go from 0 to a freaking 100. And I'm throwing sandwiches, but I was angry at myself.
Yeah.
And it's such a horrible cycle, isn't it? And, you know, and I don't think I've ever met a mother that hasn't felt that and expressed that in some way. And I think, and I love, like I said, I've always said, I love the work that you do and the insight that you bring. And I'm super excited to read your book on this as well, and the ways that we can allow our children to be fully expressed in their anger and their rage, and how we as parents can be kind and compassionate to ourselves when we are, you know, in our anger and in our rage, because ultimately that's the only way we're going to cultivate change, isn't it, around this, and not feel the guilt and the shame that comes with it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I always say that my second child, Rosie, really helped me integrate my anger, because she's my little angry child and she's not afraid to express and feel and be angry. And it's so refreshing. And it's just like, I just catch myself giggling at her sometimes, because I'm just like, oh, yeah, go on, gal, you really, and she like really gets into the frustration and she clenches her fist and she goes, and she stomps her feet and she pushes her chest out, and you can see it. It's so primal, it's so natural, it's so normal, and it's just like so beautiful all at the same time. And, you know, I'm just like, when you can see that anger is not the problem, it's the story that we've created around anger that is the problem, we can then allow that space for us to actually feel and actually grow and transform. And look, I know anger can be really toxic in a lot of situations, and, you know, we've got abusive households and war, and I'm not saying that any of that is okay, because it's not okay. But I really feel that when it comes to this mum rage and us actually integrating our own anger and allowing our kids to become emotionally intelligent adults, we really need to start reframing this story around what anger is, what it means. As you said before, going back to the apologizing after we've actually been not dealt with our anger in a healthy way, because when we're projecting our anger out onto somebody else, we're not dealing with our anger in a healthy way. But when we're able to hold space for our own anger, we allow it to be there and we see it for what it really is, you know, the message that it's really bringing forward for us in that moment is such a beautiful process, and it's such a different outcome as well, you know, when we can catch ourselves in the middle of those moments and be like, okay, I'm feeling really angry right now.
Mm,
And, you know, when you can see yourself, and it, you know, it takes a long time of doing this work. And even after doing this work, you're not going to get it right every time. But there have been moments for me where I've seen my anger be there and I've allowed it to be there. I'm not trying to run away from anger anymore. I'll just say, I am feeling really angry,
mm,
you know, and then I can say, I'm going to take myself out of this situation and I'm going to go to the bedroom and I'm going to feel my anger until I feel calmer. And then I'm going to come back and deal with the situation that's happening, you know?
mm. And I love that. And I think that's important, isn't it? And look, we're not always going to be able to do that in that moment. I guess sometimes it's like you say, that the whole definition of rage is, you know, when we are unable to access the usual calm and patience that we could normally access. But I think it's that, as you said, that invitation always to get curious about, okay, well, what was that about? Why am I
Mm,
feeling that way? What was that trigger? You know, it's always that invitation, isn't it? Just to keep exploring those parts of yourself without the naming, the good, the bad, the labeling, the shaming, but just kind of allowing yourself to feel it and be in your body. And it's something I've got a lot better at over the years. And not that long ago, actually, I had an incident where I felt so deeply hurt and really fucking angry about it. And I needed to have a really hard conversation with somebody about it,
mm,
that I knew that it was not the right time for me into or engage in that conversation whilst that emotion was still flowing through my body, you know, like
mm,
the whole concept that emotions are energy in motion. Like I had to let that emotion of those emotions of anger and hurt move through my body so I could then be in a better space to have that really hard conversation. I had to get it out of my body first. And it took me a week. Took me a week of really processing how I felt about that, why I was so angry about that, why I was so hurt about it. And I had to let it like move through me before I was able to go, you know what, we really need to have a conversation. Because if I
mm.
was to have that conversation when I was in the thick of that, don't think that I might have thrown a sandwich at them, I might have thrown something heavier at them.
And yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that story with us, because I feel like it's so important that, you know, we do try and stop ourselves from parenting in that fire. And it's not always easy, but I know from personal experience and from taking a lot of other women through the experience is that the more we explore our anger and we process that old stagnant rage, whether that comes from our own experiences through childhood, through motherhood, or a mother's experiences. Like I said before, I had a lot of my mum's rage. The more we're able to hold, the larger our capacity and our space becomes. And this is really the work that I do is I help people, women. I have predominantly been working with mothers, but I am moving into more of the parenthood role now instead of just mothers. But the more we open ourselves up to being able to feel our emotions, the more larger capacity we have to actually hold space for them so they don't feel so overwhelming. So we don't feel so triggered as quickly. You know, it's almost like as we start to process all of it, all of our old stuff,
Mm,
there's more space at the bottom of the jar. You know, if we've already got a jar that's full to the top, we only need one little experience for it to flow over the top. Where if our jar is only half full or a quarter way full, and all of our old stuff has been processed out of our system, it takes a lot more for us to actually explode over the top. And the better we recognize in when we're in that state of being, when we're like, right, this is really overwhelming, or I'm feeling really angry, but it's only like really small at the moment. It's not turned into this full rage. And
mm.
we can deal with it then. We can look at it sooner. Then we're not going to have as many as experiences of this full bodied, you know, projecting our stuff out onto other people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because that analogy you've just given there was something I was given similar, actually. I have a history of trauma as well. And so I didn't realize that when I was bringing that into my role as a mother, my baseline capacity was so much higher than everybody else's. And so, like you just explained then, my capacity where I might go from 0 to 100 is way higher than somebody else's. My line is like halfway up the page or 3/4 of the way up the page, as opposed to someone that may not have experienced trauma that can be right down the bottom. And so for me, I've literally got this really short window where I can go and overflow because I'm overwhelmed, overstimulated, and so on. And that's that analogy that you've just given about the jar was, again, very similar to I was told, because I used to get really overwhelmed and I used to get really angry about it and angry at myself because, well, why can't I manage? Why do I feel so overwhelmed? Like, I've done all this work for 15 bloody years, on myself. How is there still work to do? And I know that's a whole other conversation, but it just reminded me that we all have a different capacity. We all have a different tolerance. We all have different life experiences that we bring into motherhood as well, which is also going to then impact our capacity to handle certain things, which means we rage sooner or quicker or faster or harder. Like you say, it takes time to understand that about ourselves and allow ourselves to be comfortable with those emotions so that we can then come to the table and have these conversations. And, I love these conversations with you because these are things that people don't talk about. Mums don't talk about. There's too much shame and guilt around the fact that we might be throwing sandwiches or bloody throwing plates against walls and stuff sometimes, not advocating for it, not saying it's my finest moment, and I'm sure it's not your finest moment either. But it's a reality that we've all experienced. And therefore, it's a conversation that needs to be had so that the woman that is in the thick of that rage or has just got so fucking angry at herself or her partner or whoever doesn't feel alone and doesn't feel like she's a shit mom or a shit wife or a shit woman because she's experienced that. That's why these conversations are so important, because it doesn't make you any of those things. It doesn't make you a bad mother or a bad partner or a bad woman or a bad human. It just makes you human.
Yes.
It just then means, okay, so let's get curious and look at that. So tell us a little bit about your book and about how that is going to potentially then really help with this particular topic and conversation.
Yeah. So kind of going back to something that you mentioned earlier when you was explaining about the different capacity and the different tolerance and everyone's got their own trauma. I just want to kind of touch on that there, and what I explain in the book is that is why we all get so triggered by different things. What might be funny for one mum, maybe their kids acting really silly and doing funny faces and talking in funny voices might be really funny for one mum. And then for another mum, that could feel really, really annoying or disrespectful or rude or embarrassing. And it's because of our past lived experiences and how we see the world and what lens we look through that actually creates these triggers or these reactions to our children's behaviors. So all of the time, it's not necessarily about their behavior. It's about how we feel about their behavior. And this is something that I go into in the book. I talk a lot about why we lose it with our kids. And I also give you my emotional freedom framework in there, which is basically a framework for helping you heal your parenting triggers. So anything that kind of triggers you as a parent, I've created a 7-step framework to help you actually work through that. And as there's the version in the book, and then as you come into my program, that's also the outline of my program as well, as where we go a lot more deeper into all of that. And we start to look at communication styles and how to set boundaries and how to reframe our thoughts and how to actually feel our emotions instead of venting or shouting at our kids, or, eating chocolate, copious amounts of alcohol to suppress our emotions in life. I actually teach you how to feel your emotions so that we don't end up in these situations where we're over exploding or we're creating these addictive behaviors, scrolling on social media or drinking or eating too much or whatever it is, those addictive behaviors that people self-sabotage themselves with. So that's kind of what the book's about and how it can help everybody. So yeah, I feel like now is probably a good time to start wrapping up the conversation. So is there anything you'd like to add before we finish up today, my darling?
No, I think we went deep pretty bloody quick. And I think it's a really important, beautiful conversation. I guess the only thing I'd ever say to any mum is it does not make you a bad mother. It does not make you a bad wife, or like I said, a bad human. Like, these are really normal human feelings and experiences. And that's why these conversations are so important. That's why the work that you're doing in the world is so important. And yeah, I think I just want to say thank you, as always, for leading in light and love in this way. It's so, so, so important. And I can't wait to get my hands on your book and have a little read-a-roo.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on and being my muse and having these conversations. I really appreciate you. And one thing I just want to add to your little reminder is that to let mums know that remember, your anger is a message. If you can start to see that, your emotions are there for a reason and they're here to give you a message and to get curious, that's a really, really good place to start. Know that you're human and know that your emotions are there for a reason. They're not just there to piss you off or make you have a bad day or make you feel like a bad mum.
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you've just said that. It's like this invitation, isn't it? It shines a light on the parts of us that we probably haven't explored. And I heard this the other day where someone's like, whenever something like that happens, she's like, oh my, how very interesting. Like she just has this like, air of curiosity. Isn't that interesting? I wonder what that could possibly be about. It's this invitation to shine light on a spot of darkness or a spot that we haven't yet explored. So I love that. I love that you just shared that.
100%. Okay, well, namaste.
Namaste.
And my book should be ready by the time we air this. So just click the link in the show notes and go ahead and grab the book, grab the ebook and start your healing journey right now. Okay.
Love it.